Good morning. It is Brian. It is the art of startup war. And what happens today is what happens every time we do a podcast with an entrepreneur that we feel is a little bit special. Now, here's what all of these entrepreneurs have in common. We invest in them. And we're investing in these companies because we truly believe they have the ability to be able to grow to $2, $3, $5 million a month in revenue companies. Now, when a company reaches that level, they hit unicorn status. At unicorn status, they become billion-dollar plus companies. And at billion-dollar plus companies, they make great returns. We make great returns, and every other investor involved makes great returns as well. Over this 30 minutes, my job is to run through a lot of the diligence that we ran through at the beginning so I can share that with you, all other potential investors who are listening to this. That's it. That's all it's about, right? And we're going to go through the entire hero's journey. We're going to start looking at what the valuation, what the value proposition is itself. What was the huge problem that's being solved? How is that huge problem being actually dealt with? We're going to look at the execution of the marketing and the sales, which is everything. And then we're going to look at what the plan forward looks like, okay? So you're going to get a really good feel for what's being done, what it looks like, how it works, and how we get to where we're going to go to. But first of all, I would like to welcome on to the show.
Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you for inviting me. It's a
And
pleasure being here.
and you're used to me by now, right? So you know it's going to be all over the place, but very pointed towards the growth at the end. And I'm delighted to have you. I must have told, I don't know, a lot of people how unbelievably happy I am to the extent. Now, you're based down in Kentucky, and you have a business which is very much something which is so, I don't want to say it's so far away from Silicon Valley, but only so far away from Silicon Valley because it's so real. You have real customers, you have real product, you have real value proposition, but you also have scale as well. And when I say I've spoken to so many people, literally the conversation about you between myself and other investors is we need to spend a heck of a lot more time around your area looking for companies, because the really great companies, I believe, of the next 10, 15 years are going to be all down there. And with the things that have been up in Silicon Valley, which in many cases have been shiny pennies, will become less and less popular, even outside folks like us that can tell the difference in many ways from great companies from not so great companies. So I'm so pleased to have invested in you, and I'm so pleased that we are growing this thing and hopefully able to take it all the way to the very end. But can we just take PlanStreet back to the beginning and talk about the genesis of the idea? And because I love the fact of, well, you and I have talked about this, and it's about making caseworkers heroes, and it's about making
Sure.
folks in nonprofits heroes. And I love that because these people are the unsung heroes. But can you take us back and tell us like where the idea came from and how it even occurred to you to build something that's actually quite complicated to actually put together in a technology?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Brian. So, me and my partner, who's also my brother, we both come from a social services background. He used to lead a company that was helping nonprofits in Asia Pacific, and myself, I was focused on working in higher education and also with nonprofits previously. So, I myself experienced how difficult it is for a social worker to actually perform their job in the current circumstances where a system does not exist that is tailor made and built and developed just for the social and case workers. That's where the idea came in. We experienced the pain ourselves being the social workers and experience that pain day in, day out. And that's where we decided, okay, we're going to do something. We're going to develop a system that's going to help and revolutionize this entire social and human services industry, for them to give them a platform that will make their job a lot more easier so they can provide better service, better outcomes, and the community basically would be able to benefit from that, from this new product, because they'll be able to have a better service, a better caseworker, and a happy caseworker results in a better person in need, and with the utilities, with their needs being met and so forth. So that's where the idea came from. We started to explore more. We looked at every possible system that existed in there, and what nonprofits were doing. And they were either using pen, paper, Excel, or using CRMs, or using the old legacy softwares that are purely focused on databases and not really focused on providing the front end utility for the social workers. So that's where the whole idea came from. We started in Kentucky, we formed an entity and we decided to start to develop something that will really create a difference. So in the last 2 to 3 years, we've really been able to commercialize the product, get real customers, understand how the flows would work in, and the product is a natural fit for them. I mean, the reviews we get from these nonprofits and government agencies, and it's not just the nonprofits, the government agencies, with the federal, state, city level, these agencies, they need the software, I believe, even more than nonprofits because they work at a larger, much larger scale than the nonprofits themselves. So that's where the whole idea came from. In the last 2 years, we've been working with organizations from housing, providing transitional housing, homelessness services, shelters, sobering centers, also working with like sheriff's offices, nonprofits that work with individuals that are incarcerated, helping them back into, integrate back into the society, provide them training and so forth in terms of so that they can basically integrate back in the society, get a job, and not go back into prison again. So these are one of the two main areas that we have really focused in our first 12 months. And our system has been really revolutionizing how, especially the housing and the incarcerated individuals have been served in our system. And throughout the process and the journey, when we've been implementing the system with these nonprofits, I think we've developed a very core crux in terms of the template for the system that is now being rolled out to other areas, whether it's child and family care, whether we're going into domestic violence and so forth. Our product has just been designed in a way that's very easily adaptable to any case management industry that we are basically trying to tag into. But we are very focused into social and human services. And of course, around healthcare, our product goes around Medicaid services, where they're still providing housing, care services, but the state is paying for that. So this is basically the background and what we've been doing in the last couple of years.
I love it. And I love your term human services industry because it encapsulates so much. And there's kind of as you're talking there, I'm kind of getting these caricature images in my mind of kind of what it feels like to be a caseworker. And I kind of see, I imagine all these caseworkers in government offices that have like huge big paper files up, 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 up to the roof. And I was, I was imagining if I was going to create a drawing showing like the craziness of the system, I would have like a caricature of a caseworker sitting there with their shoulders slumped
Right,
down and their head slumped down, and just files all the way up to the roof, and then files all the way down to the desk, and then files up on the floor, and each file is like 6 inches thick or 12 inches thick.
right,
Underneath it, it says something like, not I can't see the woods from the trees, but I can't see the people from the trees, because all of this paper coming from something in nature being
right.
wasted and destroyed in a way where the poor caseworker, who I genuinely believe, like we know that nurses are like our heroes from the COVID times, but I believe caseworkers are our heroes from all the times because they
Yeah,
help the most painfully afflicted of all of us. You know, if somebody is living on the streets, they're in a terrible place, irrespective of how they got there. They're just in the place that none of us can even imagine being. If a mom and child are going through an abusive relationship and trying to escape, they're in an unbelievably urgent and painful situation. And you can go through it all, from foster children all the way through, and then go back to that caricature of the caseworker who's sitting in the office with 470 files with no urgency on any one in particular other than the ones he's trying or she is trying to remember. Like,
right,
how unfair of a way to treat these people that we've been doing over so many years. So the fact that you came with a system and said, look, you love people, and you love those people who are the weakest of all of us the most, which means that the minimum we can do is allow you tools that help you
Right.
help the people when they need to be helped. So it's so powerful. And I think I actually do have a question here. I like what you do so much. I feel like I could just spend all day talking about it. But I do have a question here, which is when you deployed this first with these caseworkers and you put it in front of them, what was the reaction that you got from the people on the ground? Not the decision makers who make like decide on the money decisions, because they're going to like what you do anyway. Having
Yeah.
project management and critical decision making software that allows caseworkers to make better decision making because they have access to it just makes sense, right? But what was the reaction you got from those caseworkers? Am I over exaggerating either their problem or what their reaction should have been? And just share us a little bit about what those early days were like.
Those early days, so the social workers went so immediately, all of a sudden, the response was, now my job is a lot more easier. Now I can tell how much I have impact I've created, how many people I've served, what was the impact. I referred somebody to an external agency, and then nobody used to track them. So now they're saying we're able to track and also tell how impactful was that service that external service provider was. So I think it kind of completely changed how social workers were trying to tackle case management before. And I think one of the challenges that in during COVID happened was the case management is all about FaceTime. So you got to meet the person, you got to assess their needs, you got to make sure that you're making the right referral, right decision, and providing them the right service. In COVID, the social workers were not able to interact with the customers at all. And then that made their job even more easier. And during the COVID time, that's when we really launched the software, when the COVID really started. And that made their life a lot more easier. Paper forms were gone. They can do digital signatures, collect documents from clients even without coming to the office. So the initial reaction of the product itself making life easier, but during COVID, making an additional impact. And that's still going on. I mean, if you use PlanStreet, the the need for a person to come into office and sign all those documents and move through that paper trail, all that goes away. So it not only makes the social worker's life easier, but also thinking about that patient or that client that's sitting in a home, don't have to take public transport or or get on a taxi and come to that particular office just to apply for a service or a utility. All that has been automated in the system and made life easier for the participant and also for the social workers as well.
I love it. So, okay, we're past the part where is this a problem? Uh-huh. We're past the problem is this a great solution? Even more so. Let's move to size of market. So, how many, because you might get some investors who'll think this is great. I love it. Of course, people are going to use it, but isn't there just a couple of government offices that will use this? And how
Yeah.
can this possibly grow
Uh,
to be like $3 to $5 million a month in revenue?
I mean, I've recently been asked by an investor asking me that, are you asking us to do God's work? How are we going to make money? So yeah, we all would want to do God's work. We also want to make money. And nonprofit industry, you will not believe this, but more than 30% of federal government's budget is allocated towards social services. And out of that, in each of the 5 or 6 main programs that PlanStreet focuses on, each program gets more than $1 billion in annual grants that's given directly to these nonprofits to help the industry out. Out of that, minimum 4% is spent on these systems that they have to have technology to actually meet the basic criteria of that particular grant. There are more than 1 million nonprofits in the country that are working in one capacity or the other. The market size, the sizable market that we can basically achieve for case management software industry is estimated to be around $4 billion between social, human services, and healthcare. And from a perspective of how much a PlanStreet can do, PlanStreet currently in the last year and a half, without having any funding at all, bootstrapped, we kind of doubled our revenue from year one to year two. And with the amount of the investment that we're requesting from $500,000, that's our currently annual recurring revenue, we would easily jump up to $2.5 million. So currently we serve 55 plus organizations. In order to reach to $2.5 million, we would be looking at 150 organizations that we'll be serving. And within the next 3 years, we basically aim or target is to reach to $5 million annual recurring revenue, which would take us to about 250 nonprofits and government agencies that we're looking at. And we're looking at a pool of 1 million customers just within the United States. I'm talking about international. We also have clients in Australia. We have clients in Singapore that started to sign up. Globally, this market is more than $8 billion, which is purely neglected, and not a lot of competition exists in there.
None at all. And you mentioned like hospital systems. If you ignored everything else and just threw this at the NHS in the United Kingdom, that alone would be worth a couple of $1 million a month. Like, it's just a lot of money. And the thing is, you even mentioned 4% on technology. The number is actually much higher because the inefficiencies that are inherently built into the system, because people don't have sufficiently good use of technology, is costing 14, 20, 22%, huge amounts of money, because people don't have access to the tools they need to do their job.
Sure.
And I'll tell you, look, the most impressive thing, because I think it's important to have this conversation about how we drive that revenue. I didn't believe that when you and I first spoke. When you and I first spoke, within the very first conversation, I said to John, let's get this guy in. It's a perfect deal, right? We just need to make sure that we convert him over. Like, I was more worried about you not wanting us than us not wanting you. And it was because I saw the trajectory of your growth. The trajectory of growth is the only truth that matters. Everything is, my wife has this phrase called, which is kind of awful, but it's so memorable as well, which is like intellectual masturbation, which is that we can all spend ages talking and pontificating and imagining scenarios, but at the end of the day, the only truth is the customer truth.
Hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about how you've grown revenue this year and what you've done with customers with very little marketing, which is the
Right.
important thing, with some outreach to some customers, but with very little marketing. So talk us through, since the beginning of the year to kind of where you are right
Yeah.
now, what that customer traction has looked like, and how you've got to the guts of $45,000, $50,000 a month in revenue.
Right. So, the first when we started offering as a commercial offering, the product, the first 10, 15 customer were the hardest part to get into, because at that time you're trying to preach them to the fact, hey, this is going to work well for you. They're saying, oh, it's a new company. Why should we leave the CRM? So that the first 10, 15 were like impossible to get. And that's the hardest thing, trying to break when you're trying to break away from what they usually do or used to. That's basically becomes the hardest part. Now at this stage, from year one, when we had gone past that 15, 20 customer mark, growing from there 20 to around 55 plus customers, which are started to grow. Minimum user base is like at least 20, 25 per organization, and it goes up to 50 and 75 user base and 100 as well. I think the real deal was the first 15 customers who use the product, and that's how the nonprofit industry, the social sector industry works, is that they took a while for the impact to actually realize that what kind of impact PlanStreet has created for them. And once they went through the rollout, started using it, started generating their first federal government reports from our system or state level reporting, that is the time when the word started to go out of PlanStreet. So in each state, we started getting referrals. I think the real growth that we've had from the first 20 customers to the 40 or 45 customers, they were purely based on referrals from the customers that we signed up in the year one.
Amazing.
We were able to retain from year one as well, and we were able to double the customer base from the previous year. And I guess that's because we didn't have enough funding to put it on ads, marketing, outreach. Everything has been inbound so far, which means that we've been getting referrals. People have been talking about how good the software is, and they're also talking about why would they be spending more money to subscribe to a CRM or to a software that is not going to work for them. So that's been the pattern for us in terms of being able to manage, and it's a HIPAA compliant, secure system. It has to be in this industry.
Mm.
Productivity comes secondary, security comes first in this business. So the data has to be secure, the product has to be secure, and then you make sure the entire organization is HIPAA compliant and understands what do's and don'ts. So from that journey, from year one going into the year two, and being able to double our revenue, double our customer purely based on our customers. And I guess that's why we're so excited to take us into the next year, because we anticipate tremendous amount of growth. One, we'll be reaching out to people ourselves based on the investment that would come in the organization, plus the referrals and the word of mouth that's gone out into the social and human services sector. That has been the real element for our growth.
And then what does marketing look like for next year? So if we say the marketing engine at the beginning was just hard work and phone calls and praying, right? And then you get people on board, because it is impossible at the start.
Right.
We have a HIPAA compliant system, which is going to be perfect for your case workers. Who's using it? Well, you know what? You can be the first. Call me in a year's time when you have a lot of like. So it's really hard at the beginning, right?
Right.
And then after that, your second year was about saying, let's make sure that we continue to make the system more and more
Yeah.
robust. Let's
Yeah.
make sure their experience is great. And let's see if the referrals come, and the referrals came. Next year has to be a viciously aggressive marketing campaign. What does that look like? So how do we hit the beginning of the year or quarter one like really hard
Right.
after the folks that we want to get, so we can take that 50 users up to 100 users as quickly as possible and secure your place at the $1 million round table, and try and see if we can even push it further up than that.
Right. So I think there are in the social sector three easier way to market the product that we've learned. And there is nothing comes easier. Of course, everything requires a lot of effort and hard work. But the way into the sector is, of course, there are annual events that takes place for specific programs. So from federal to the nonprofit level, there are platforms available where you can go in and meet and greet these nonprofits, which are basically their annual events. Secondly, reaching out to these on social media. That's always another way of doing that. But what we plan to do here is that the organizations that we currently serve, all of them, they're about in the 50 organizations are in about at least 20 plus states that we have currently got the customers from. They all have local networks within that particular state or city or county. And we aim to basically leverage on that particular network as well, have customer events, go out on those in those territories and try and have some face time with nonprofits. I'm talking about some sizable customers, which would basically help us double the revenue, even without reaching up to 100 customers. So, and the other area is that once we reach out, launch marketing campaign in terms of outreach campaigns, advertising, and so on. Once we put together an outreach effort, currently everything is inbound. Whether when we start our first outbound, whether it's events, whether it's online marketing, Facebook, LinkedIn ads, reaching out on these forums, which are nonprofit run, very easy, very welcoming. Once they understand what we're trying to do, to get into those forums, those events, and have some face time with these customers would put us on a track where we can very easily double the revenue.
Excellent. Okay. I love it. And then as far as, the team and how you grow the team, you change it, and maybe also any worries that you have on competition, because we haven't really spoken about competition, but I think you and I, like, even though we've spent a lot of time together, we haven't really spoken about competition because there doesn't seem to be any. And obviously there are CRM systems, but they're not fit for purpose, because these CRM systems cannot be used for caseworkers in a way that they were made for caseworkers. And if that's the case, they don't want to use like a project management system, which is just non-customized, and they don't want to use Salesforce and start putting this stuff. This is too hard. So just share a little bit on competition, and then share a little bit on the gaps on the team to get you to Series A, because that's the objective now. Get you to Series A as quickly as we possibly can.
So competition, of course, there is always some kind of competition out there, one way or the other. CRM is one competition because it takes knockout punch to a nonprofit to understand that CRM is not going to work for them, because they're not just doing customer relationship management. I think the second area is there is a legacy, couple of legacy softwares out there that are basically database focused out there, and they're slowly and gradually customers are realizing and kind of turning towards our side to understand that, okay, this is not going to work for us. This is expensive. This is not even a great fit for me, and then moving away from there. Now, in terms of certain niche areas, there are a few products here and there that do case management, but they're not a comprehensive product at an enterprise level that can go out and compete and kick out, like a Salesforce CRM. In order to do that, your product has to be solid. It has to cover all bases in order to be implemented in a 500 user or a 5,000 user organization. So that's around for the competition. In terms of our team, I think what we have is we have a team of 5 or 6 core individuals. And around that, we've built teams in terms of developers and quality assurance for product and technical and support teams. But we have a customer success manager, we have a sales manager, and then we have teams that we're building around those individuals. And then, of course, as we expand into further territories, we'll bring in more customer success managers, implementation staff, business analysts, and so on for the product. Because having the right product is one thing, and then being the ability to have a successful rollout, so that you're able to discover customers' needs and then reflect that in your system as well. So that component is pretty much covered. We all come from large services rollout. I myself was doing a large ERP rollouts in higher education sector prior to starting PlanStreet, in social sector as well. So from a services implementation perspective, we're very well covered. That's why we get these customers out there pretty easily. Even the public sector ones, which is a little bit difficult at all times to get the projects on track. Excuse me. But I guess our core team is there, and we'll build on that and expand into different areas and moving on to Series A.
Wonderful. And I'm going to leave you with the last word in a moment when you can give us and don't worry, you have a minute or two. Like, I'll give you the last word where let's make sure we get your email address out to folks. And then also, I have this one final question, which I always love giving, which is 10 years in the future, 2 people talking in a bar. You're not there. You're not one of the people. And one of them is saying to the other one, I love PlanStreet because it does this. 10 years in the future, not today. Okay. So it's got to be that massively transformative purpose, which actually is built into that 10 years in the future of where you're actually building it to. And before I say that, let me just give a brief summary from my side as an investor in the company. And number one, when I invested in the company, every single thing that I see today is merely what was promised to us and more. Okay. So for all investors coming in, I can say that without any question in the world, On's word is his bond, and what they're building is extremely real and extremely tangible. And this product is making waves in a very important way. Number two, we have founders who have experience, not just well-intentioned, but have experienced in deep domain expertise in an area where they are dedicating themselves, which is a monster market size. And anybody who doesn't realize that is incorrect. This is huge, the area that they're going into. Number three, this is being de-risked to the level that we have now seen dozens of clients come on board, pay and stay with extremely high retention rates all the way up, which is expected to continue as we go forward. Number four, even though it is being de-risked, we still haven't turned on the marketing channel properly, which leads us to believe there's at least a 3 times upside before we even have to start at looking at the usual scaling challenges that face a company that takes us close to the Series A right on its own. And we at Expert Dojo will be helping with driving that scale ourselves. And 5, finally, look, you have to make a choice on the type of companies that you want to actually invest in. This is a little bit like that quote from Warren Buffett, where it says, if you're going to hire somebody with integrity, hire somebody with skills, and hire somebody with energy. But if they don't have the integrity, don't worry about the other two. In this case, you have to invest in a company that can give you an amazing return on capital, better than all else, and have ticked those first 4 boxes that I mentioned. But it sure as hell feels nice when the 5th box, which is the doing social good box, gets to be ticked for free while we're getting a return on our money. So over to you, on. Finish us off. Email, please, so people know how to contact you. They already know they can catch me at brian@expertdojo.com if they can't catch you. But give us your email, please, so they can get you there. And then finish us off with just 60 seconds on what this company looks like in 10 years.
Okay, so you can reach us on my personal email, which is on aon.rana@planstreetinc.com. If that becomes difficult, you can always reach us at sales@planstreetinc.com. In 10 years, person sitting in the bar would be saying 2 things. They'll saying, number 1, I love PlanStreet because it's so easy to scale from 50 users to 500 users. I started with PlanStreet as a 50 user social worker deal. Now my organization works throughout in all 50 states. We have 500 plus users, and we continue to expand and grow with PlanStreet. And was so easy to expand and scale with PlanStreet. Number 2, I also love PlanStreet because it is so easy to use, and it makes my social worker's life so much easier. The onboarding time in order to train my new employees is negligible. They just come in and immediately fall in love with PlanStreet because it's tailor-made for these social workers. So these are core reasons why I love PlanStreet. It makes my social workers' job easier, and also has improves our client engagement and retention. Believe it or not, nowadays and in 10 years, there will be 100 times more nonprofits in the country. There'll be a lot more competition that they will have to provide the best of the best service in order to attract a client within their organization.
You heard it here. Future unicorn. On, thanks ever so much. It's a
Absolutely
pleasure to have invested. I'm grateful for you letting us into the round, and I'm looking forward to everything that comes. All investors, look at this one. It's an important one.